The diseases which you will need to manage or control from your tomatoes, we can categorize them into three broad categories. We have the blights and the mildews and the cankers or the wilts. To begin with, the cankers, these cause the tomatoes to wilt and sometimes to rot, for example, around the stem. The most serious one is known as the tomato stem canker. You will see signs of the disease beginning, black spots around the stem which grow bigger and bigger until a whole section, internode, of the stem is affected, and sometimes the plant will drop off. This is a very serious disease. It sometimes is accompanied by bacterial wilt, where you see the whole plant will wilt on its own as if it's not getting enough water. These are very serious diseases and they are not easily managed by application of chemicals. So to avoid these diseases, always look for varieties that are resistant to these types of wilts. Another disease in tomatoes is Fusarium wilt. Fusarium wilt is soil-borne. It's a good idea to drench rhodazine at 20 milliliters per 20 liter during planting. The symptoms of Fusarium wilt include yellowing leaves, and they normally start on one side of the plant and then they proceed to the second side of the plant, and eventually the whole plant will die off. Remember to always practice as much as possible crop rotation. This means you do not plant any crop from the tomato family after your current crop of tomatoes. Exchange with another crop from a different crop family. For example, after planting your tomatoes, you can plant cabbages or beans or maize. This will help you to suppress bacterial wilts and cankers, as well as Fusarium, which are soil-borne. We have two main types of blights. This is early blight and late blight. Late blight, sometimes it will attack early, but you will not know until flowering when the disease will manifest itself. The signs of blight include spots on the leaves and also on the stems. And these spots become bigger and bigger until eventually the leaf will die and fall off. To control blights, we recommend that you spray pesticide that is chlorothalonil and mancozeb based. The mancozeb will help to protect from attack, and the chlorothalonil will help to eradicate the disease. You can spray this, especially if the conditions are wet. You can spray every 7 days. If the conditions are dry, then you can spray at every 2 weeks until the disease advance has stopped. So there are several different types of mildews, but the main evidence of mildews is a whitish, powdery material on the leaf surface, mostly starting from underneath the leaf. This can be extremely destructive during very warm conditions. We recommend that you spray rhodazine earlier on, between week 3 and 5, in order to suppress any mildews that may be attacking your crop. You can also later on spray stage, which will also help to suppress the disease. You will need to top up your tomatoes with some fertilizer about 4 to 5 weeks after planting with more nitrogenous fertilizer. If you're continuing with your harmony at every 2 weeks, then you'll be better off. But we also recommend just before flowering that you apply a fertilizer that has calcium and potassium and magnesium, because these are important for flowering and fruiting. Therefore, you can top dress with CAN or otherwise continue with your harmony, because harmony will help to unblock some of the calcium that is already in your soil. This is important because your tomatoes will require calcium in order to avoid calcium end rot. In order to boost your fruit and flower production, we also recommend that Just as your tomatoes are beginning to flower, apply AfriKelp. Mix it with Harmony at the rate of 1 milliliter of Harmony to 2 milliliters of AfriKelp per liter. Apply this just before flowering so that you can enhance good production of flowers, and you will be guaranteed of maximum production of your tomatoes. Your tomato crop should be ready for harvesting from around the 70th day from planting. Make sure you harvest the correct ones according to your market. We recommend that you harvest them just as they are turning color, so that if you wait until they are fully colored, they will not make it to market. They will overripe in the market. Ensure that you harvest into clean, disinfected containers, and then you can weigh them and you are good to go. For effective pest and disease control, I'd like to give you a few general tips. First of all, always ensure that your crop is free from weeds and rubbish. Remove all old tomato rubbish or debris from the farm and take it far away. You can make it compost, or you can bury it, or you can burn it. Number two, ensure that your field is not surrounded by bush or bushy plants. Clear them as much as you can, including grass and other bush. And make sure that every time you do a spray, you also spray the surrounding bushy areas, because some of the pests and diseases will hide in these places. Number three, always ensure that your crop has maximum nutrition, because a good, strong, healthy tomato plant will be able to resist diseases. And even if the diseases attack, then they will not be as destructive. A fourth tip is you can use friendly crops that will help you to protect your tomato crop from attack by insects. For example, yellow Mexican marigold. This is a crop you can plant around your tomato crop, and your thrips and other insects will be attracted to the yellow flowers and move away from attacking your tomato crop. You can decide to do either greenhouse tomatoes or outdoor tomatoes. The greenhouse tomatoes will typically produce more, up to 15 or 16, 17,000 kilograms per acre. And the outdoor tomatoes will produce between 8 and 10,000 kilograms per acre, depending on the variety and depending on the climate conditions. For greenhouse tomatoes, you can choose the varieties that are climbers. We call them indeterminate varieties. They will continue producing over a long period of time. And given good management, you can get those high production values. With greenhouse tomatoes, be extremely careful that you do not get insects inside the greenhouse, because then controlling them will be more difficult. The difference with greenhouse tomatoes is that the climate is more manageable, so that you don't get the extreme wet conditions that you would get outside. And therefore, it's probably easier to manage your diseases. And also, the high humidity levels inside the greenhouse increases the production. You get more flowers and you get faster and more fruiting. You must remember that greenhouse tomatoes are more expensive per unit to produce than the outside tomatoes. But by and large, you get higher production in greenhouse tomatoes. Also, greenhouse tomatoes, you can produce them over a longer period of time, even when the temperatures are not as conducive. I hope these few tips have been helpful to you as you plan your tomato production. Feel free to give us a call or drop us a line on our contacts. We'd be happy to hear from you. Send us pictures and we'll answer any questions that you may have. So all the best in your tomato production and happy farming.